The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what it is that we're building. So if I bring this over, you can see all of this is what it was generated by me, and this is the newsletter in Markdown. And you can see all of these things, like you can see that there are lots of companies actually running this internally. The reason why this is useful is, imagine that you're reading lots of things or you're trying to keep up with lots of stuff. There's nothing better than having something in internal communications that is automated. Okay? Look at that. I think it's fantastic. And I'm going to show you how we're going to build this, because you might be interested in running your own AI newsletter. So, let's get into it. What we're building today is quite simple from an agentic point of view. We want to trigger our agent to define a newsletter type. In this case, I'm feeding it an AI page, archive, which is where a lot of the open source documents are being published from universities and researchers and so on. And then we want to be crawling a lot of those pages. For me, because this is PDFs, what we are mainly be looking at, we need to define if those pages are useful, and I'm gonna use different libraries for that. If the page is useful, I wanna return the relevant chunks. So if there are any chunks that are necessary for my AI newsletter, then I'm gonna add them together. If it isn't, I'm gonna discard the chunks and I'm gonna be moving into the next page. And I'm gonna continue this cycle of, if the chunks are good and relevant, then add them and combine them together. If not, then move on to the next page. When I have all of the chunks from all of the pages, then I'm gonna combine them and I'm gonna generate the newsletter. And this is a really simple agentic implementation. So let's get into implementing it. First thing that we need is Visual Studio Code. Is an open source AI code editor. Most people use it in their environment, probably like the most used one. There are other ones like SED or Windsurf, Cursor, like it doesn't matter, you just need one of those, okay? And then the second thing that we're gonna need is, I personally am using UV as my package management system. UV is fantastic, it's built on Rust, so it's extremely fast, it's compiled language if you don't know what that is. And all you need to do is just copy this. If you're in a Mac or a Linux, I personally am, because I am working in the Windows, WSL, Windows subsystem for Linux. And then all I'll have to do is copy this and then just paste it over here, and I will install UV globally into my repository. And then we need to add two commands, okay? So the first command is UV init. That's how you initialize a project, and as you can see, it's already telling me that I have one. And then the second one is UV VM, and this is how we generate the virtual environments. As you can see, all of this is done for me already. Now, the last thing that we need to do is UV sync. And why is that? Because in this repository, when you get access to it, the code for the newsletter, it's available in my school community. So if you join in with the link in the description below, all you need to do is just request access to it. And you'll find in that community that we have lots of people talking about agents, how to build agents, and it's a fantastic community. It's free, there's nothing to sell in there. All I want is to share the love and to bring people together. So please consider joining, and I'll see you on the next one. Using UV Sync, you can install all of the different things. And as you can see, all of the different dependencies for this project are already here, and they have been synchronized, okay? Now, the second thing that we need to do is I'm gonna be going line by line, looking at the different things to create our agent. As you can see, we only have one file, which is the main.py. And these over here at the top are all of our dependencies, okay? We're gonna need crawl for AI. Crawl for AI is a scraper that it's built on top of Playwright. Then we're gonna need Asyncio, which is the one that allows us to use async functions. We're gonna need logging because we want to keep logs, as you were seeing here up the top. This is what logging gives us. And then we have AO, HTTP, This is what is going to handle our requests to the web pages so we can scrape them. Nest Asyncio is to make sure that I can run things cojoin. Requests, which is the platform to request things. PyMu PDF for LLM. It's what allows us to read PDFs. Datetime is just a simple module to have datetime methods. .m that will handle our environment and our secrets. OS, which basically is the one that allows us to look at our internal stuff. And Grok. Grok is the platform that we're going to use because we can use open source models in there. And if you go to Grok, you can see over here all of the different models that we have. In particular, I'm going to be using the new OpenAI GPT OSS 120 million parameter. I think is really good when you add tool use to this, and this is what we're doing. We are adding tool use to it. What are we doing? So I'm gonna add this simple line over here, and what this does is it allows us to overrun multiple async communications. So if there is a library that is running an async process, then you can run another async process on top of it, and this is how you do it. The load.m, what it allows us is to load our secrets. So I have a .m file over here, which has got my API key. So you're gonna need an API key, and you get that in Grok. So if you go to Grok, and then you go to API keys, you can see over here all of the different API keys, and then you can create one here at the top. What else are we gonna do? We're gonna define the logger. So why do we need a logger? Is because we want to track where the status of our agent, and this is how we activate it and create it. Okay, as I was saying, we have the secrets over here, so I'm importing the Grok API key, and I am bringing the model that I have. This allows us to change the model as we please because all of the functions rely on this parameter. And this is how we instantiate the client for Grok. Now, when I was running this, I was actually working with Llama 3.1. But since we have the access to this larger model, we have the option to change that. So what I'm going to be doing in the documentation is I'm going to change this. I'm going to say define access to the Grok. So this is the generic access to it. As you can see over here, I have this doc string that explains, even though I've changed this, explains what are the parameters that we're passing to it. So model is the model, name of the model to use. Okay, and it returns either a string or none, depending on if it fails. So with this try and except block, we're gonna ask for an auto completion, which we are sending these messages to this model. I'm going to zoom in because I just remember that I sent this up. Model equals model, because when I zoom in, these things disappear for me. Now, scraping the content. How are we going to be doing this? As I said, we're going to be using Crawl for AI. And Crawl for AI is fantastic. I love it. Any single scraping project that I have or any data that I need, I just use it. This is how we define the configuration for the crawler. This is how we define the dictionary and what we need out of it. And if we have URLs, which is essentially what's happening after the first crawl, then we're going to use the async web crawler to get all of those results in all of the documents. This is how we do it. Then we are looking at how to handle PDFs, because in my project I am creating a newsletter from open source archives from Arxiv. I'll show you in a second, but I need to write this PDF and I need to read it, and this is how I do it. Okay, so I create this temporary PDF, I write the response, and I send a simple done back to my function. Now, because I am prompting this, and you can see it down here, I have a first step that allows us to define whether or not the article that we're reading or the data that's being scraped is actually useful for us. And that's why I call it is page useful. So, the prompt is that I'm telling you that as a critical researcher for a marketing newsletter, and they cover AI topics, and this is why I wanted ArcSafe. Okay, I don't want it to add any commentary. I just want it to look at the text, and I want it to return the things that are useful for us to use in our newsletter. This is how I do it. So I give it this prompt, and I give it the web content in a separate block, my API request. And this is how I'm gonna call the function that I was showing you before, with the session and the messages. And the session is to keep it stable. This is why we need an AIO HTTP. Now, with all of those chunks, we need to generate the newsletter. So when I get all of the text from all of the useful messages, then with this simple prompt, it's not even a complicated one, we are going to create our newsletter. And then that prompt is going to be our system prompt, and then we're going to be using this with all of the relevant content to craft the newsletter. And again, it's going to go back into Grok, and we could be using a different model for this. This is the beauty of it, to generate everything. And ultimately, we need a function to join everything together. So I've given the option here for people to try different things, whether or not they want to try different pages or whatever, but I'm just demoing with what I wanted it to do. We're gonna generate the session, so basically to manage all of the requests, making sure that we have the web crawler activated in that session so we don't spill memory. And over here I have this block of text that you can use if you have anything different than what I'm using, right? So if you don't have PDFs, this section of the function will be useful to you. I have PDFs because it's exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm just gonna choose the 10 first items, because if you look at my initial request, I had 506 different things to look at, and with Grok we are limited. You can use something like OpenAI, you can use an open source model, you can use whatever you want, but because I'm using Grok, I need to be aware of the amount of tokens that I can send per minute, and that's why I'm only using 10. And also another thing that I've done is I've constrained the chunks of text to only 3,000 characters, so that way I know that I'm not gonna go over the block. And this is how I run the loop to basically get everything together. And once I have everything in my aggregated context, which is the element that I'm using to save all of the useful chunks, I am adding this to the newsletter, and I'm asking to generate the newsletter. And as you can see, this is what I'm using. So I wanted to my AI newsletter, and this over here is where we have all of the different sort of open source articles that come on a daily basis. This way I don't need to read them. I can create my newsletter, I can send it to the team online, and they can read whatever we feel like it's more useful. Now you can change this to whatever you want. You can change this and create it in a way that it serves your purpose. But this is extremely simple. It's a very good way of launching your first agent, and I hope you like it.